From Inwood in New York City, welcome to Inwood Art Works On Air. It's where we meet musicians, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home at what we affectionately call upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and today we welcome local writer Monet Hurst-Mendoza. Monet is a playwright and TV writer from Los Angeles who lives here in Inwood, New York City. Her plays have been developed with the Alley Theater, Rising Circle Theater Collective, Astoria Performing Arts Center, WP Theater, the Public Theater, Institute of Contemporary Art Boston, Westport Country Playhouse, and the Long Wharf Theatre. She's an alum of the Emerging Writers Group at the Public Theater, R&D Group at the Civilians, Fresh Ground Peppers Playground Playgroup, WP Theater's Playwrights Lab, and the Van Leer Fellowship at New Dramatists. She has been in residency at the Watermill Center, MacDowell, Ucross, Still Right, La Mama Umbria, Malay Arts, the Mitten Lab, and Space on Writer Farm. Monet was a writer-producer for seasons 21 through 24 of Law & Order SVU and is a 2025 NYSCA Artist Grantee. She's a proud member of the Kilroys, the Dramatist Guild, and Writers Guild East. We're going to talk to her about her work on stage and the camera, but first, let me welcome you, Monet, to Inwood Art Works On Air. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. So, where to start? No, I'm just kidding. No, it could be just a podcast about your bio, but we'll just, obviously you have a passion for creating theater and champion Latino stories.
Yes.
It's kind of like the underhand softball pitch.
Yes.
But let's go back to it's hard to write, and particularly for a living. And so I wanted to go back to everyone has a good origin story, if you will. Mm-hmm. So where did your passion for exploring the human experience through writing develop from?
Well, it actually developed from my acting. For a long time, when I was started when I was about 8 until I was about 18 or 19 when I moved to New York. I was trained as a musical theater actor, actually, and that's what I thought my path was going to be. And then I was waitlisted for the musical theater program at Marymount Manhattan College, which was a very competitive program. I believe it still is one of the more competitive ones.
I was just there last night, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
Yes,
oh my gosh, my old stomping grounds.
It's still there.
They look so different now, too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I went there, I was waitlisted for the program, and I was like, when am I going to do something, theater related, right? I had to wait to re-audition. I was taking, history courses and psych courses, all your gen ed kind of stuff. But I was like, I'm in these classes with people that are trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives. And I was like, I know what I want to do with my life. I know that I want to tell stories. At that point, I wanted to tell stories from a performing perspective. But if I really went and looked back more closely, I was writing short stories to kind of express how I was feeling. My grandparents had this fireplace that had a protruding, I don't know. I used it as a stage, but it was just a platform that protruded out. And I remember holding them hostage after Thanksgiving and being sit down here and I'm going to tell you the story of Peter Pan with me and my brother where I direct and I'm doing all things. And I remember they always
busking your grandparents'
100%. Well, the best part, they would always say you could never go to the bathroom because if you got up to go to the bathroom, you'd be sit right down. Be sit back down. I'm not done yet.
I like to use that I don't know why we don't do that in our real theater shows.
I know. I'm turn that phone off.
Yeah.
I think Patti LuPone did that once.
She did do that famously.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
More people should do that.
I agree.
But yeah, I guess so. That was sort of the origin story, and when it came time to put that sort of origin story into practice. I somehow had way more courage as a plucky 18, 19-year-old from across the country to just kind of walk into the dean of theater's office, and I was like, "Hey, I don't want to be doing this anymore. I really need to be doing some kind of a theater class. So what are you going to do about that?"
Listen here, see?
Yeah,
it's an old Western movie.
Yeah, definitely. And then she kind of, very nicely, Mary Fleischer, entertained me, and she was like, "Well, what do you do?" And I was like, "I act and dance and sing." And she's like, "Okay, so those are things you have to audition for. So what do you do that is none of those things, that can maybe like get you in the department, and then we can, switch you around. And I had written a play in a theater practicum class, which was a course in my high school that my theater director had created, where we essentially did everything. So somebody wrote, and then somebody produced that play. Someone designed it, and then people acted in it, and then we rotated. And I think there were only maybe like 8 of us in that class. So it was really a way to get sort of like hands-on training for the business of theater from all angles. And I turned in a play that was like, it was supposed to be like a 10-minute play, but I was going through some like really intense family stuff, which seems to like have not left me. But I think in my teenage years, I was like, I have no place to put this. I don't really except down on the page. And it was supposed to be like 10 or 15 pages, and it wound up being like 60 something pages. And I didn't realize that like maybe there was something more to that. I was just like, this just isn't done. It's just like the story isn't over. Yeah. So I'll just keep going until it's over. And so I turned that in thinking like, whatever, this is bullshit. I'm going to be a singing, dancing man anyway. So, I'm just going to bide my time. And then, let's see. So I turn in this, this 68-page play, as a way to sort of bypass my school's, my college's like system, thinking that I would just, smoothly transition into musical theater. But I didn't realize that it was actually kind of competitive, the playwriting department. So there were only like 6 or 8 people in it, and I was one of the 6 or 8 people. Wow. And again, I think fate was like hitting me over the head multiple times. That registers you saying when doors keep opening, right? Yeah, exactly. And then I started taking playwriting courses, and I was like, wow, this is actually way cooler. I think like to be the architect, right, of everything, and the actors come in, sort of second to last before the audience, right? They make whatever the piece is. And I just found myself slowly not missing the acting part of it. The more I started taking class and the more I started reading. And also I had more access to like German expressionism and Boal and all these like interesting social movements as they that are harnessed by the power of theater. And I was like, this is way more interesting than anything that I had been doing previously. And so kind of fell in love with that and never looked back. And that's a very long-winded answer of my origin story. I love it. I love it. Now we have it. And now we can tell everyone more about it. Well, I think that's fabulous. And I think everyone, you found it at a young age though, which is great because it's great that, acting is a great, I think it's most of the time I'll say it's 75% of the time that's the entry point for a lot of people into it. But it's that developing your voice through storytelling and figuring out what that is and having that experience as an actor a little bit, at least familiarity of like that passion for storytelling. You were able to transfer that. It's pretty awesome. And also actors. Yes. So you know how to use them to tell your story. Yes, I do think, the longer that you're in it, that you can come to something from an actor's point of view. I think that does only help your storytelling, the way that you're able to like effectively communicate it. Totally. And then also you have my plays have a lot of physicality in them. And I do think that comes from like my body moving in space, you know, like how to communicate this with just like, if we make a triangle, immediately that tells something staging-wise to the audience that doesn't need to be verbalized because it's visual, which later then, I saw that in television and film, right? Like how you use visual storytelling. That's just another layer. Yep, very much so. How did you get from Los Angeles to Inwood? I moved to New York when I was 18 for college, and then I kind of bounced around. Like I was in the dorms all 4 years, which if I could give a word of advice to any young ones listening, like you don't need to live in the dorms all 4 years. Like you shouldn't. It's so much more expensive living. Well, maybe not now. Who knows? But who knows? But at that time, it was like I could have gotten roommates and, paid a couple $100 maybe, but instead I stayed in the dorms because I I had never lived anywhere else except my home in LA, and I was like, I'm not ready to live on my own yet.
Comfortable.
Yeah, it was more comfortable, but the price tag for staying was astronomical. But yeah, I stayed in the dorm system, and I lived like in Midtown in the 50s, and then we had dorms on Roosevelt Island, which was really interesting for a little bit. And then after college, I moved to Williamsburg, like sort of right before the Williamsburg like bubble popped. And then there was a leak in our ceiling that caused the ceiling to cave in our apartment in Williamsburg. And then I was kind of couch surfing, and I was so desperate. I was like, I gotta find a place to live. I can't keep like, living sort of on other people's couches. And I had 2 cats at the time, and so my cats were staying with another friend. And I was like, I just feel really unsettled. And so I answered an ad on Craigslist for an apartment over here on 207th Street. And we're still in that building, but we're in a different unit. But I started in that unit, sort of like under a weird sublet situation, and then
Gotta love Craigslist.
Yeah, gotta love Craigslist. It could have been disastrous, but the people, I think it also speaks to like the caliber of people in the neighborhood. Like it was a fellow artist, who kind of understood the hustle, and and we were very cool with having just like a sort of unconventional, AKA secret from the management office sublet situation.
That's usually like 50% of the sublets in New York City.
Yeah.
So,
and
for artists.
Yeah, and it was great. And I lived there for, a couple years, like maybe almost a decade. And then during the pandemic, my husband and I were fortunate enough, right when the COVID bubble, like brought everything down, to like purchase an apartment in our building in another unit. But I also had, been saving my TV money. I think very smartly. I did not live sort of above my means, even though my income increased temporarily for that time. And then I just used that money to we used it to invest like all of our savings that we had.
Good.
And we bought a unit. And it's nice because it's in the same building. It's a building that we care about. It's in an area that we care about. All of the things that we do are in the neighborhood. Like my husband goes to church at Good Shepherd. My, doctor and my dentist are around the corner. So actually the pandemic was, was horrible in a lot of ways. But for us, it was like, wow, we actually don't leave this area unless we have to.
Yeah.
We kind of noticed like we have the 3 parks, surrounding our house, which provide a lot of peace and solitude and fresh air. The farmers market is right behind the church on Saturdays, and the place where I get like my nails done is like up the street. So
you have your places.
I have all of my places. We only go to the same like 5 or 6 restaurants.
It's a small little town.
Yeah, it really is like we were saying before we started recording. It is like the Grover's Corners of Manhattan.
It is. It kind of is. Yeah. It's just these are people who lived here when. And has the neighborhood informed your writing at all? And your storytelling?
I mean, I think I haven't like necessarily written something about the neighborhood, but I think the characters that we encounter every day in our neighborhood, like they are in the writing. I did when I worked, but when I was part of the R&D group at the Civilians, we were doing like a housing, the group that I was a part of was doing a play about like housing developments. And it was mostly like centered on Washington Heights and Harlem, which is those are different neighborhoods, but I think you can see like common threads and similarities. So I have certain, scenes that are evocative of like, the old Dominican men on the corner playing dominoes, the coffee place that I go to, like right before the 1 train, the corner store hangouts, the barber shops, the nail salons, like all of those things, even though it wasn't exactly the same neighborhood, there's flavors of Inwood there.
That's good. That's pretty cool. So what inspired you to transition from theater to writing for television?
Money.
And scene, folks.
And scene.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We lose all of our great people. We being like I'm the ambassador for theater, which I'm not. It's
I think you are. I think you are.
Well, I'm still doing it 30 years later, so maybe that's my problem. But so they're all that was in therapy. But yeah, I mean, so what a great opportunity. And how that opportunity come about?
Actually came about through theater, through playwriting. So, I was working. So for many, many years, I had like just a bunch of part-time jobs that I cobbled together. And I believe that's actually when we first met, right?
Sure.
When I was like doing like producing for plays on the side. I was working in box office. I was a nanny.
Yeah.
And I was essentially working like 7 days a week for, several straight years with no break.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would really like health insurance. I don't want to be doing this anymore. So
People just assume you have health insurance. They see people, and most of us don't.
No, I was like,
I do now, but
yes. And even though I do have health insurance now, I still go to like the clinic up the street, like the Mount Sinai clinic. Like I don't need to.
Can't take the girl out of theater.
I'm just like something hurts. They'll see me right away.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. But Mount Sinai, I highly recommend it. Over, what is it, like on 218 or something like that?
Up on Broadway and 215.
Yeah, go over there. They're really nice. Tell them Monet sent you.
Tell them Monet sent you. The girl with the ailments.
Yes, exactly. But where did we go? What was the question? It was like, how did I get there? The train of thought. Money.
How do you get the TV?
Yes, the TV. So I got a job working at Samuel French. So I was like, I'm going to trade in all the part-time jobs to get a full-time job at Samuel French. And I used that full-time job to sort of get my writing in a position where it could be, pitched by my agents. So I had an agent at the time, like a theater TV agent, and then my two managers, which are mostly in television. And I told them, I was like, look, I want to make like a real pivot in my career. And they're like, well, you have to like have, the writing sort of in a space where we can pitch it. And I realized like, if I've got like 5 part-time jobs, I'm too exhausted to do writing. So I whittled it down to 1 job, and it was a little bit of an insane time because I could really only write between like 4 a.m. and like 7 or 8 at the latest.
You get a job.
Because I had to go to work, and then I don't write after like 5 or 6. I find that it's like diminishing returns for me. So really that chunk in the morning was really great. And I know a lot of people, when I'm like, they're like 4 a.m. Oh my God, that's like terrible. But actually I found it really great because you're kind of half asleep, so you don't edit yourself. You just keep going. And I think a lot of times, when you're at a more, a regular hour, you might become a little bit more self-conscious in your own work.
I agree.
And start editing.
I agree.
And I was like, I only have 3 hours in which to do this, so I don't have the time to sit there and edit. Yeah. So I did that for maybe like 2 years. I got my writing samples in a good enough place where my agents could go out and pitch it. And I also, the benefit was that I'm being from Los Angeles, my whole family is still there. So I would take like sick days, I was like, I'm not feeling well on like a Wednesday. I'm out. But really I would be flying to LA, and then Thursday, Friday, I would be doing, like interviews at like 6 different studios, meeting with executives or producers.
Yeah, pitching.
Yeah, just pitching and pitching myself, really, not really pitching a show.
Okay.
But it was like general, they call them general meetings where you're just having a general.
Right.
And they want to get to know you. And someone at NBC, Rebecca McGill, who is a producer for SVU, got a hold of one of my plays, which was about the criminal justice system, or not criminal justice, but, the criminal system.
Yes.
And they were very interested in the characters that I had presented and the point of view that I had, and they felt that it might be a good fit for SVU. So then I met with Warren Light, who was the showrunner at the time, who's also a playwright.
You're going to say very well done playwright.
Very, very, very well done playwright. Wonderful man. and we were supposed to meet for like 30 minutes. I said I was going to a doctor's appointment again, and I was like, oh, I don't feel so good. I have to go home. When I realized that the meeting was going longer than 30 minutes.
You're freaking out then?
It was funny because, and it was funny because Warren and I always joke about this. He was like, I can't promise you anything. It was like a 2-hour meeting. And he's like, I can't promise you anything. He kept saying that. And I was like, I'm in the theater business. Like, I don't expect anything to actually come of this meeting.
Rejection is my maiden name.
Correct.
Okay?
I was like, I don't expect anything to come of this meeting.
No,
I think we're just talking.
Yeah.
And then, a couple weeks later, I got an offer to join the writing staff, and it was great because it was my husband's birthday, and I had just moved like the last money out of my savings account so that we could go eat at Prune. And I was literally thinking, like, I didn't tell him this, but I was like, oh my God, like, we're at the end here, like, of the savings. What are we going to do? Da, 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 da. And then I got like a call from my managers that were like, they want you.
Awesome.
It was a great story. R.I.P. Prune. I really miss that restaurant. Not in Inwood, unfortunately.
But it will always be in your heart.
But it will always be in my heart, and it will always be associated with my first TV job.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a great story.
Yeah.
What a great story. Well, I mean, it's funny. I'm glad you talked about like your, when you're in need, and also like your kind of your building blocks and your foundation in theater. Because I remember when I met you, it was like 13 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And you were juggling all those gigs, and Rising Circle was with Nancy, and that was it was a real. I always want to say a pause button and say, hit the pause button and say it was a really great thing, because it kind of like had that liberal arts feel to it, where it was a small band of brothers and sisters, mostly sisters, who did everything, and we're all about new work and getting that work seen, particularly advocating for emerging playwrights of color. And it's been a little bit of time since then, so it's no longer around so much anymore. I'm sure if you waved a magic wand, it could pop up. But there's been some time since, so I just wanted to ask you, what do you take with you from that experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Like, we worked so hard in that company, and I really, Rod Bowen and Deepa Purohit, who started it in 2000, like, they really did something that was very ahead of its time, where it wasn't, we have theaters that are like, Pregones or Intar or Mai or Natco that, service, a particular group. And I think Rising Circle was ahead of its time in the sense that they created a space where like all these groups that have been sort of othered can come together and create work together. So I do think you're right. I think like if somebody were to wave a magic wand and pick it up, it would be a beautiful thing to see again. I think the thing that I take with that with myself from that experience is just on the ground producing boots, like what it actually takes to make theater. By the time it gets to the audience doesn't get to see, the operations budget that like, you've been like pulling your hair out to try to meet.
Nobody cares about admin.
Yeah.
They just want to see a show.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like also community. Community is what I really took from that. That was like the first place where I came in as an artist. I saw what they were doing. I saw the value in what they were doing. And even though I didn't kind of understand yet what I was signing up for, I was like, I want to be a part of whatever this is, because you've created a space that feels safe, that feels welcoming, and needed. And I was like, I don't know what it entails to be part of your merry band of kick-ass people, but I would like to be one of those people. And really, 90% of the time, it's just somebody that's like, I want to help you. Yeah. And then you can help somebody.
Well, I think that's right. And
so having the courage to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. And having the courage to ask, and also, I mean, if you're, it's a lifestyle of being in theater, right? It's like there's a lot of talented people, and if you. Hopefully, if you're still of a certain age doing it, it means you're still finding. I mean, we're all still finding our way. We're all learning all the time. But you want to work with cool people who will help you move forward, and then hopefully you want to be part of something bigger than yourself.
100%.
And I think that was really cool about what you just said. It's like you started saying you saw the value and like you wanted to serve this group that was doing this work for everybody.
Yeah.
and bring it all together.
And the thing that, even though Rising Circle isn't really around like as a like producing organization, all the people that I met there are still like my closest group of friends. And we all still work with each other. Like Raquel Almazan, like I'm babysitting her baby now.
Yep.
Like, so I see her like probably like a couple times a week. And, Melissa Mickens is working on a project with her now, like helping her produce something. Nancy for a while was producing stuff that my husband was in. So, I mean, I think and Deepa Purohit and Sanjit De Silva are like my two mentors. Like they've just really been there for me the entire time. Kathleen Cho, who was one of our like a frequent performer, like I probably like I talk to her every day, like in a text chain. You know what I mean, with Deepa and Nancy and Melissa. Like That's I mean, awesome. We're all like texting each other. So they that community of supporters like has sort of transmutated beyond the original organization that brought us all together. And there's like genuine friendship. We all show up at each other's, important life events, and they're like people that I can talk to when I have an actual problem. Like, should I take this gig? Something feels weird about this gig, or is this gig too good to be true? Tell me the truth. Or, I'm thinking of taking this gig. What's the cost benefit analysis of this? Just walk me through it, And
what does the panel say?
Yes, exactly. But we all do that for each other. And isn't that what theater is, right?
Yeah.
It is that community.
It is.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And you actually kind of lead into my next question to you is that, what is the landscape now for you? And I'm not going to make you comment on symposium as theater as a whole or anything lofty like that. You can if you want to, but you're right. But it's great to have a community of support and moving forward because theaters, particularly writing too, it's like you go into your Dickensian garret sometimes or your 4:00 in the morning coffee gaze and you do the work you can, and then soon there becomes a time to share it, but helping you, like the people to help you make those choices, right? And and I hope it seems to me, being one who's still doing it as well, is that there's less opportunities for people helping people create new work. There's still some stalwarts out there, but it's getting harder and harder to get new work out there. But it's always been hard to get new work out there. Yeah. So I don't know what's changed. Has it changed for you?
I think what has changed is like the landscape. Like, and I think about this way too often, but it's just like the places that we loved, like the Lark, have like where they were like specifically dedicated to like new play development have like shuttered. They don't exist anymore. Space on Writer Farm, where I'm currently on the board, is like, unfortunately the space had to shutter because of financial reasons, but the impulse to still create and like have that community is still there. And so it's like, how do we pivot right now, especially like when we don't have very much like, government funding for the arts in the United States, unfortunately, in general. But like now, like with the NEA, like, things are, you have to like sign a piece of paper that says like there's only two genders and like I agree to XYZ thing or else I won't release your money. Right. And I think I am a little warmed by like how many arts institutions are like, no, we're not signing this friggin' piece of paper. This is like, shove it. You know? But what I think this does bring us to is a revert back to like Boal, Teatro Campesino, all these things that I fell in love with, German Expressionism, right? It's like, or, no theater, Butoh, in the Japanese tradition, it's like a few group of people that are making work that is more raw, more public in the sense of like anyone can do it. It's not just like people who have been trained to do this. I think there has been a lot of focus in the last like 50, 60 years of theater history where there's like a institution behind it.
Well, look at all the grad schools.
Exactly.
It's big business.
It's big business. Well, yeah. And, I never went to grad school. So,
Yeah, well,
you don't need to shell out all this money in order to go to
Exactly.
school. In my personal opinion, I do also know people that like have gone to grad school and it has helped them immensely. But sometimes I think that's less, this is my hot take, I think sometimes that's less about the education you're being given and more about the kind of person that receives the education and what they do with it.
Sure.
Right?
It's the training they receive and how they apply it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Are you a person that is like, I'm going to grab onto these people and make the most of a situation? Or, are you just going to just take the courses and get the degree and hope it all works out?
Could be both.
It could be both. I mean, honestly, it's a mystery.
It is.
Who
Everyone's
knows how
different,
anyone.
too.
But yeah, I think that's the pivot. I think that's what's
Yeah.
happening. We're going to see less of an institutionalized bent for theater if it's going to survive, and more community-based, less quote unquote professional or industry
Yeah.
work. I think that's what it feels like.
I hope
like a return to what it was.
I hope people feel empowered to create. As I mentioned to you before earlier, it's like I keep doing what I do, you keep doing what you do, in the hopes that people will join.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Of course it's hard. But I am encouraged by a few people who are, and I would love to see it at a more grassroots level. But because, as you're saying too, we don't know where the financial support will come from. But if art is political,
Yes.
and so in all ways, actually, if you think about it. So my hope too is similar to yours in the fact that the current climate and state of quote unquote professional theater will help galvanize others who, I've seen some really great community productions that were so warm received by the people who live there. It's like who is your audience and who are you doing it for, and whose stories are you telling? I think those are all wonderful things to consider as we move forward.
Yeah, and I think, kind of like to circle back to like the beginning of our conversation, like the community theater is somebody's origin story, right? Somebody goes to see like, Christmas Carol, and you might be thinking like Christmas Carol, whatever, why are we always doing the Christmas Carol? But that might be somebody's like first introduction to, I want to do that. I want to tell that story.
Yeah, that's
How do
why
I do
Shakespeare
that?
is still being done. That's why there's those titles that are still being kicked around. Yeah, it's your entry point. So speaking of points, is there a work of yours right now? Do you think would resonate for this moment? Do you have a play you think would really serve right now?
There is a play that I'm working on one that I think is like good for this moment, but it's not like in a sharing spot like to talk about, because I'm like, what if I fall flat on my face with this one?
Understood.
So I won't put it on the record.
Okay.
But my play Torera, which is about a female bullfighter in Merida, Yucatan, which is where my family's from. It's part of a play cycle I'm working on over the course of my life about working class women in different little towns and cities within the state of Yucatan in Mexico. That one was just published by Samuel French not too long ago, or Concord Theatricals now. So it can be picked up and it can be read. And I think that is a really amazing in my words. I do think it's amazing. Like when I see the actors perform it, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh man, I wrote this. This is cool. And I like it when you have good actors get to see something that you wrote and you're like, whoa. But that is a play that is about defying social norms and what people expect of you. It is a great play for young women, I think, because it's about stepping into your own power and owning it and not being afraid of it. It is also a play that investigates a family legacy and what that is, why our family bonds the way that they are, and how that makes different people, how that influences different people, how it makes them who they are. And I think it's also like a really interesting look at like, even if you're successful, like there's pain that contributes to that success and how that changes you as a person, how like personal tragedy and pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, where can we send folks to find more about your work?
I am on New Play Exchange, so you can find me there. If you have a great subscription, they have a great subscription program. I think it's like $20 a month, and you get access to like every new playwright that is like signed up in that database. There's scripts on there. You can also reach out to me directly on my website, MonetHurst-Mendoza.com. And I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. And if anyone wants to read my work that's not published, just shoot me an email. I'll send it to you.
And maybe she'll share with you like her secret project she's working on.
No, I don't know about that. Well, I'm going to New Harmony Project this May where I will be working on that secret project.
In Indiana.
In Indiana, yeah, I've never
sure.
been. So if you have been to New Harmony, Indiana, let me know what to do there.
Yes.
Other than write a play.
I know former board members of that group, actually.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, very good. I'm from Cincinnati originally, and so I know.
That's right. I did know that about
area
you.
A bit, not much.
Perfect. Is it like Grover's Corners?
No, it's much. Well, actually, the west side of Cincinnati, I will say, west side, best side is absolutely 100% Grover's Corners.
Excellent.
But east side, not so much. But whatever side you're on, I encourage you to go check out Monet's work and champion her work and get those plays done. All right.
Yes, please.
That's what we need. We need champions. So. Monet, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for being here. This is Inwood Art Works on Air. It's where we meet the musicians, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes that make their home here in northern Manhattan. If you have a moment, please show us some love and rate and review this podcast 5 stars on whatever platform you listen to. Many thanks to Good Shepherd here for hosting us, and to HideSites.com for uptown promotional support. You can support On Air and all of our programming by making a tax-free donation to Inwood Art Works. NYC/donate. Follow us on social media at Inwood Artworks to keep all that we do, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, live performances, and so much more. Inwood Artworks on Air is proud to be supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council, and Inwood Artworks programming is made possible by the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims for Inwood Artworks on Air.